Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's 5:30. I'll call this meeting to order. I'm going to ask that everyone who speaks, speak up because we don't have the benefit of the microphones at the dais. We do have one here for public comment. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. The purpose of this meeting is to open the door for a discussion and a workshop on this issue of a public housing authority. No decisions are going to be made today by the council. This is strictly opening the door to discussion and listening to you and listening to each other. We got to start somewhere with the discussion of our options. So that's what today is about. So if you are concerned that we're going to be making a decision today, I hope that alleviates that fear. And also those who may not be here, you want to text them. So we'll begin with a presentation, first of all, by Tim Lindbergh with the Economic Development Commission, and followed by Vince Michelle, who is the City County Housing Coordinator. These are roughly the presentations that they made at the Chamber Leadership Breakfast yesterday morning, right?
This is probably
roughly. Yours is different.
Roughly, yeah.
Okay. And so there's a lot of data points, and I would prefer if we keep it fairly informal. So if you have a question during the process, if you'll just give me a hand, I'll be happy to have you to ask a question to get clarity. This is an open workshop. I'm interested in council, obviously council comments and your views, as well as staff, city attorney, anywhere we get along the way. If we can get through this by just being casual and have the opportunity to learn what we need to learn, because there's a lot we don't know. There's a lot I don't know about a public housing authority, so I'm here to learn a lot. So let's begin with the two presentations, and then we'll go into public comment. Tim?
I'm okay here?
Yeah, and I'm going to encourage you to speak up.
I will. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I think my role is to present some data. Those of you who were at the Leaders Breakfast yesterday saw kind of a more formal presentation from me with PowerPoint slides and data. What I've given you is a handout of most of the raw data behind some of those slides. So we'll start with the first one. This is the city of Fredericksburg average home sale prices going back to 2006, which back then the average home sale price in the city of Fredericksburg was $232,683, or $133 a square foot. So if you want to, fast forward through to last year, the average home sale price in the city of Fredericksburg in 2022, and this is homes for sale in the city that closed through our MLS. That average was $659,689, or $355.47 a square foot. If you look back and you take that 9-year period from 2006 to 2015, the average sales price increased over that period of time, over that 9-year period of time, by a little over 28%. More recently, the 6-year period from 2016 to 2022, the average sales price increased by a little over 82%. So through the first quarter of 2023, we're down slightly, ever so slightly. The average sales price for the first 3 months of this year was $638,695, and the square foot number it dropped to right at $349 a square foot. So the next page, if you look at that, these are single family homes for sale in the city. Again, in our MLS, grouped by price range. And I pulled these numbers as of April the 5th. And at that point, there were 149 homes for sale. 33 were either under contract or pending. And the available number was 116. The real sweet spot, as you might expect, seems to be in the mid-range homes, price range, but looking just at those homes that are below $500,000, that totals 46 listings, 18 of which were under contract with 28 available. I looked a couple of days ago, the average list price for not necessarily this group, but whatever the group was as of April 24th, the average list price of all those homes for sale in the city of Fredericksburg is currently $836,207. Next chart that I have looks at building permits. I was curious as to what we've permitted, and these are building permits for new single-family homes in the city of Fredericksburg over the past 3 years, broken out by the most active neighborhoods for which those homes were permitted. And the total is 323 building permits over the last 3 years. In 2020, that number was 100. That number peaked in 2021 at 162, and then fell last year, probably not surprisingly, to 61. And then through the first quarter of this year, the city's issued 13 building permits. The other thing that I was curious about, and this isn't meant to be inflammatory, this was just to put it in perspective, but from May 2021 through December 2022, that's 20 months of this 36-month window, the city permitted 375 new STR properties just in R1 neighborhoods. So we've actually given up more housing stock than we've added in terms of new homes constructed just in the half of that period of that 36 months.
Question,
Sir.
either you or Vince, these permits, 2020, 21, 22, that type of spike and dip, is that reflective of national average, would you say, or is it in any way unique? Do you know? Not the numbers themselves, but the trend. Like in 2022, it dropped off the charts, sort of.
Yes, I would say, I would basically say the increase in 2021 is a reflection of what didn't get built in 2020. And then everything went crazy, including the single family home. So there was pent up demand, especially the builders who were delayed in pulling permits, those type of things, because of their concern for, supply chains, that type of thing. And then you'll see a drop off from 21 to 22 as at the last quarter. Again, there was still a lot of supply chain issues. And also then you started seeing an increase in interest rates and that type of thing. And so some of the builders, I think, had kind of, stop some of their projects to see kind of where it would shake out, not get, in the middle of something and then have to stop. So.
But this doesn't reflect anything unique to Fredericksburg.
It does not.
Conditions in Fredericksburg.
This up and down is no, it's not.
And I'll run through Oaks of Windcrest over that 3-year period. There were 93 permits issued. Crabapple Grove, there were 51. The Beginnings, there were 41. Post Oak Village were 6, and that's only because it didn't come online until probably about mid-year or later in 2022. So most of that activity was in what I would consider our entry-level neighborhoods. And so I think it was two things. I think it was, we were started running out of entry-level lots on which to build last year. That pipeline started drying up, and then obviously interest rates ticked up, and the folks that were needing to buy houses on a payment were severely impacted by that doubling or more of interest rates. The next chart is single family residential lot inventory. That's just to see what is currently developed on the ground and available for purchase as of April 12th anyway. We had a total of 77 lots. Again, this is restricted to the city limits. It doesn't talk about the hundreds and hundreds of rural lots that have been developed out in the balance of the county recently. So this is just in-town lots. But of that 77, again, not just being obvious, probably the only entry-level neighborhood in that group would be Post Oak Village, and there's 17 lots there. So we're not overrun with affordable lots at this point. Next page shows you kind of what's in the pipeline. The top half of that page are single-family residential lots under construction as we speak. At Harmony Hills on Piker Road, that's Friendship Oaks Phase 1 that Lennar is planning to build in. That's 2 phases of Allstott Village over in the College Center Morse neighborhood. Totals 211 lots. And then behind that, timing wise, either pending or proposed, depending on how far along. In some cases, that is subsequent phases of developments that are on the ground today, like Frieden, and then subsequent development phases of Friendship Oaks. We've got a total of 655 lots that I throw into the pending or proposed category that are out there for future development. Just for kicks, I threw in condominiums and townhomes under construction. By my count, I get a total of 46 around town that are under construction. And I would venture to say most all of those 46 are slated to be short-term rentals. Condominiums and townhomes within the city, pending or proposed, I get a total of 92, and all of those are a ways off, in my opinion. Next page, I'm shifting gears to multifamily housing. Sir, okay.
For those who don't have the handout, I want you to, on page 4, the single family residential lot inventory. They're all currently available as of April 12th. That last column, those are the prices of the lots.
Yes, sir. Those are the prices of the lots, and I'll go back to those.
Quoting some of those numbers.
Yeah, I will. Because I kind of dialed into what was affordable, but for instance, in Frieden Phase 1, those lots range from $142,000 to $243,000. Post Oak Village, those lots range from $76,000 to $139,000. In Stone Ridge Unit 11, those lots range from $225,000 to $437,000. And then miscellaneous lots that are scattered about town and existing in other neighborhoods that are for sale in the MLS, those lots total 13, and they ranged in price from $185,000 to $675,000.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Again, talking about apartments, and then the next few charts in the handout relate to apartments. And Tony may remember, he was on my board for a long time, that about 10 years ago, I began surveying and collecting data from our apartment complexes. And I need to point out that this is not every unit of multifamily housing in Fredericksburg. I mean, there's duplexes and fourplexes scattered around town that it would just not be feasible for me to try to collect information from. So these are apartment complexes. I think the smallest complex in my survey list is 23 units. So most recent survey I conducted was on March the 30th of this year. And I went back and I, very coincidentally, over the last 5 years, I had pulled the same data from that same set of apartment complexes within 2 or 3 weeks of each other the last 5 years. So I don't think there's a whole lot of, seasonality or, because of that. But, if you look at the total inventory as of right now, again, that I surveyed, there's a total of 827 apartment units in the city. Again, that I surveyed. Of that 827, 193 are age restricted, meaning they may be 55 and over. They may be restricted to 62 and over. I mean, there's an age restriction on them. 149 of the number are income limited. Those are going to be tax credit projects and other projects whose rents are governed by the state or somebody else. So I kind of distilled down to the market units, and that's 485. And when I go into what the rent ranges and average rents are, I'm really talking about market units. But the takeaway from this page, that, you know, based on all units, overall occupancy is currently 98%. Adjusted occupancy, and I'll explain that. Typically, you may have an apartment complex that has taken several units offline for renovation, remodeling, repairs. And I collect that number and I back it out of the equation, and I call that adjusted occupancy. So adjusted occupancy is currently 99%. So from that period of time between 2019 and 2023, overall occupancy, or let me go to adjusted occupancy, ranged from a low of 97% to 99%. Last year it was 99%. The year before it was 98%. In 2020 it was 98%. So anything you want to say is we were consistent about our apartment occupancy at this point. The next page looks at rents. That's part of the information that I collect, and I spread that out over, again, the last 5 years. And then I broke those units into 1-bedroom units, 2-bedroom units, and 3-bedroom apartments. You can see how many complexes had units that were either 1, 2, or 3 bedrooms. So you can see what that number was. You can see the number of units. And you can see the average rent, and then what I call the weighted average rent is really based on how many units you have at certain prices versus just averaging the rents for 1-bedroom apartments across, in this case, the 6 complexes in town that have 1-bedroom apartments. And then you have the rent range. And so, again, this does not include those income limited apartments or age restricted units that I pulled out of the equation. So looking at the March 30th numbers for a 1-bedroom apartment, the average rent was $1,181 a month. The weighted average rent was $1,214 a month. The rent range was from $825 to $1,445 a month. For 2-bedroom apartments, and there's more 2-bedroom apartments. The total census of the 1-bedroom apartments was 72 units, as opposed to the 2-bedroom apartments, we have 310 units. And 8 complexes that have 2-bedroom apartments. So the average rent for 2-bedroom apartments is $1,470. The weighted average rent was $1,399. The rent range is $945 to $2,017 a month. For 3-bedroom apartments, and we don't have as many of those, where there's 87 of those units citywide, but the average rent for 3-bedroom apartments among 6 complexes was $1,802 a month. The weighted average rent was $1,849 a month. And the rent range, which was a much tighter range for 3 bedrooms, was $1,700 to $1,980 a month in rent for 3-bedroom apartments.
Question.
Sure.
The average rent percentage increase that you have here,
Yes.
is that since 2019?
That is 19. So that's over a 4-year period of increases.
You know,
And I skipped over those. Yeah, for 1 bedrooms, over that 4-year period, they increased 24%. The average rents did. The 2 bedrooms increased 25%, and then the 3 bedrooms increased by 27%. So
is that what's going on?
somewhere between 6 and 8% a year.
That's actually a bit low.
Okay.
It's very site, site specific as far as the community on that, but that's actually a little low.
Good. Thank you. Go on.
All right. Multifamily housing under construction. This is a list of all the apartment complexes that are making additions or under or construction for new units. There's a total of 6 complexes that are either turning dirt or have sticks coming out of the ground. I'll just run through that list real quick of what they are. Vineyard Crossing, the old Eagle Apartments on Highway Street, is adding a new building of 6 units. The West Live Oak Apartments, which is the old TRICARE facility on Live Oak, is 63 units. The 1846 apartments over here on Friendship Lane are 234 units. That companion project, which is Woodland Cottages, it's a 55+ community. Those are 62 units. The same developer that's doing the TRICARE facility bought property across the street for some duplexes. And that's underway, and those total 46 units, 23 duplex units. And then Orchard Grove Phase 2, the owners of the Orchard Grove Apartments and the Rolling Hills Townhomes next door bought the 5 1/4 acres at the corner of Crabapple and North Llano, and are building a second phase of Orchard Grove, and that's 80 units. So adding all that up, by my count, I get a total of 491 units that are under construction. Don't have a lot of good information on what the planned rents are. None of those projects are going to be income limited projects, low income housing tax credit type projects. They're all market complexes. There may be one of those projects is at the more affordable end of the spectrum, probably. And then everything else is going to be, fairly substantial. The Woodland Cottages, I do have their rents on that. And again, that's the cottage style 62 unit, 55+ community. They're building 21 bedroom units there, and they range in price for those 1-bedroom units from $2,600 to $2,850 a month. They're building 42 2-bedroom, 2-bath units. They range in price from $3,450 a month to $3,600 a month. Again, they're appealing to a different demographic, so they're going to be higher than probably anything else on that list. But it's one of the few complexes that actually have their planned rents for, and they are doing pre-leasing. Any questions? The next page is 2 sets of data. The top half of the page are pending multifamily housing projects, pending apartment complexes. That would be the group that has cleared most or all, in my opinion, of their development hurdles, and in some cases may be getting very close to breaking ground, but are not yet underway. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of those such projects totaling 598 units. Behind that is a group of projects that I'm calling proposed. Proposed would be that group that, in my opinion, is not as far along and may need additional approvals or development work to be done if and before they move forward. That group, again, proposed, that group totals 808 units. So, well, that's a substantial number between those two groups. That's 1,406 units. I would point out that only one of those 15 projects, including the ones that are currently under construction, are intended to be or would like to be planning to be a low-income housing tax credit type project with income limited rents. So everything else on those lists are market complexes. But I think the thing to focus on is we've got 491 under construction, which would be new units that would be in addition to, by my count, 827 units currently on the ground. So just applying those numbers, that would be an increase of a little over 40% of the apartment stock that we have today that's under construction. Next category is a category I kind of spin out. The city often refers to these as multifamily as well. I put them in a separate category. I refer to them as single family built for long-term rental. Because they are long-term rentals, they are detached, but they're not on the same size lot as you would see with a single family owner occupied residence. So don't have anything in that category under construction. We've got a couple of projects that have such units that are pending. And then a couple of more projects in addition to additional phases of those two projects that would be in my proposed category. The pending number would be 62 units. The proposed number is 146 units, totaling 208 units, again, of single family long-term rentals, either pending or proposed. The last page that I have for you all is these are your traditional single family homes for long-term rental, i.e. rent houses. That are listed in our MLS, which by no means is all of those for rent in the Fredericksburg market. It was just those that I could access through the MLS. So as of April the 12th, there were 15 such rentals for rent in the MLS in the city of Fredericksburg. For those of you that have the handout, you can see what street they're on and the age of those structures. You can see the rents, you can see the square footages, and then you can see my calculation of rent per square foot per month. But I'll give you the totals, the 15, the average rent for each of the 15 units works out to be $2,937 a month. The average square footage for each of those rentals is 1,905 square feet. So if you do the math on a rent per square foot per month, the average is $1.60 per square foot. So the range of those rents are from $1,850 a month to $4,500 a month. And again, the average rent among the 15 is $1,905 a month. So that's kind of a reduced set of the data that I presented yesterday that I thought was more appropriate for discussions tonight. So if you have any questions.
Thank you, Tim. Council, any questions at the board? Vince?
I've got a couple of comments on some affordability subject to Tim's presentation. Lenore has I live in San Marcos. They have a like-kind development that they're putting in there now. That is proposed to be a starter type of home on a smaller lot. And one of the things, as I said, is what was the average prices they're selling those homes at right now. They're going from, small 1,300 square foot house up to around 2,100. Their average sale price is $325,000 on a snapshot that I took. So basically what you'd be looking at, and on a 20% down, you'd need about $65,000 down payment. And you're based on the current interest rates, you would need about $2,400 a month to support principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So based on that type of requirement, monthly requirement, 70% of the family households here in Fredericksburg would not be able to income qualify even for those type of starter homes proposed at that base. I'm also assuming that the other 30 probably would qualify, are already single family homeowners in the community. The 1846 apartments that are going up right now, the 234 units, they have a like-kind development in Bernie that I will assume that is going to be very similar at the size, the amenities, and their price points. So it is marketed as a luxury complex. So my expectations is that it would be priced fairly high. So the last thing I'll say is, even though a lot of this development may not hit in the sweet spot, it's good to increase supply at any level, because the more supply creates downward pressure on on multifamily and single family at the lower price points, simply because there's a lot more and there's a lot more to choose from. So people can move up. So it will create some vacancies. The best way to do it is try to build in the middle of the income group, so it can support people going up and going down for their capacity to afford, and or move up into a nicer unit, that type of thing. Some of the older units here that are commanding high prices, that are perceived to be right now the cream of the crop here, may not be the cream of the crop, so they may not be able to command as much. So even though, like I said, even though they may not be at the price points you want, just simply having the supply and to increase here is going to have a positive impact. The last thing I would say is that in discussing some of these proposed developments, multifamily, some of the developers are having substantial issues on trying to hit an affordable price point on at their market rate developments, but due to challenges of getting general contractors lined up, and now with the substantial increase in interest rates, some of these projects have been put on hold, and so it is not known unless the city staff has any updates on some of them as to what the status is. So, but in speaking to them directly, there are certainly challenges that have hit everybody of proposing a project year and a half, 2 years ago, and then at this point in the process, things have changed substantially. So they're trying to work through that. If not, obviously they own the property and are in the process of trying to resolve their issues. But at what point are they going to be able to move forward, and at what price point they may be forced to develop at a higher price point than they were prepared to do at this point. So,
Okay, thank you for laying the groundwork for our situation. The numbers probably don't surprise anybody with regard to lot costs and so forth. So let's move toward the topic of the meeting, which is the consideration of the housing authority. Is this the presentation you made yesterday?
it is.
Okay.
Who's doing the slides? Okay, great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Vince, I want to honor everything you've done. Would you be able to get through it in 20 minutes?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because I want to.
Do it 5 if you want.
No. A lot of people have not seen it, but I want to honor the people who are here to comment about it before we get to speaking about it.
Absolutely, yeah, certainly, this is a process, obviously. The proposal to create a public housing authority in Fredericksburg was first presented within my housing study that I provided to the city and the community back in April. It was in one of a number of recommendations that I benchmarked. They're not necessarily my personal recommendations, but subject to the housing study. I went and looked at various municipalities and basically just did a laundry list of all of the various, either directly or indirectly, activities, programs, policies that would potentially be available to the community. So it was presented again a year ago, and it was through the city's representatives on the Affordable Housing Task Force, council members Emily Kirshner and Bobby Watson. There was some discussions with them directly to kind of tee the idea of the formation of that. So working with them and kind of getting them up to speed on some of the questions and some of the things that I'll visit with quickly this evening, kind of evolved into the discussion that was brought to the full Affordable Housing Task Force that's made up of a number of stakeholders in the community. And it was discussed at that meeting also as to whether this might be a viable option to move forward. And so, we received some, positive feedback on that. So as you well know, the two council members, made a recommendation to place it on the city agenda. So here we are. So that was just kind of getting everyone up to speed on the process. So, I came into the affordable housing industry late from decades in the private sector. So I was like a lot of people that I had no idea what a public housing authority was. My assumptions was that it was a federal entity that dealt exclusively with federal programs, and we're talking the public housing program and the housing choice voucher, the Section 8 program, which is the primarily. So it wasn't until I got involved with them that I realized that a public housing authority is actually a unit of local government established by state law, which is Local Government Code 392. So that would be subject to your creation of a housing authority. It would be the state statute that you would look to with respect to your responsibilities and authorities and to form this entity. So what I can tell you is that the old model of what I call a 20th century housing authority that only exists to administer two federal housing programs is not correct any longer. Housing authorities, again, most of them began in the 60s through the Johnson administration with the expansion of the social programs. They're basically saying that we're going to expand these housing programs, but we need state participants to run these things for us. So why don't you go ahead and create these housing authorities? So everybody said, yeah, great. So there was a big influx, a lot of development of public housing within the late 60s and the early 70s. And so the housing authorities were formed and created, and they had the same assumption is that, okay, well, all of our administrative oversight and funding is coming from these two programs. So that's really all they ended up doing at that time. There was not any assumption of, hey, I'm going to, we have a broader, opportunity and a broader mission. And it wasn't, quite frankly, probably wasn't necessary back then. So fast forward to around 2015, and all of a sudden there is, the entire Western world is in the grips of a substantial housing shortage and affordability crisis, and that gets worse and worse as you go down the income cohort level. So there was a concerted effort, and there was also a direction by HUD to move away from the public housing model and allow public housing authorities that had issues with their inability to repair and replace the public housing units, that there were certain state statutory changes and federal regulatory changes that allowed these public housing authorities to move into a more expansive role, get involved, convert their units into with the low-income housing tax credit, those type of things. So they also were tasked with their sponsor, the municipality, said, look, we're having more of a problem. We need you to begin to expand your role, and what can you and can't you do? There's discussions about this missing middle with respect to, what are you going to do to support housing at a scale where it's not supported, it's not eligible for people at 60% AMI, and it's not market rate. It's called the missing middle. So housing authorities are slowly changing and converting into what I call a 21st century model. This model, the housing authority that we created here would not have any public housing now or in the future. There's no funding to expand a public housing unit. You might be able to get funding to replace it or repair it, but to expand it, is not on the cards. Also, the Department of Housing and Community Affairs in Texas handles the Section 8 voucher program for Gillespie County. So a traditional view of a housing authority created in Fredericksburg is not the old model. It is a new model that would be, that would enter into public-private partnerships subject to combining the housing authority's assets with the expertise and the assets of private equity investors and developers to enter into partnerships. So go ahead and hit the first slide and I'll start popping through those. So the whole purpose of the housing authority is act on behalf of the sponsoring entity, which in this case would be the municipality, city of Fredericksburg, okay? A county could establish a housing authority. Counties and groups could establish a housing authority, a regional housing authority. But primarily what we're talking about, so the whole point of this is that the municipality establishes the need and the mission and the directive of the housing. Next slide, please. And I cannot. Reading glasses, so. That's, yeah, so this is basically coming, these slides are coming directly from the local government code, the state statute, which gives the statutory authority. So what can they do? Prepare, carry out, employ, lease, operate a housing project, provide for construction, improvement, repair of a housing project, lease or rent housing, land, building facilities, including the housing project, borrow money, accept grants or other financial assistance. And that also includes the issuance of a private activity bond to finance the development of the housing development. So I hate to use the word project because that has a bad connotation. So they are developments and don't be confused with the old assumption of what a project is, because that's not what we're talking about here. Next slide, please.
That's it.
Take over, lease or manage a housing project, form a partnership or legal entity to raise capital, acquire, construct, lease, manage commercial space incidental to a mixed-use project. So in other words, if you would have the ability for expansion, let's say if you had a housing development and you wanted to, like say, tag on a childcare facility, the housing authority would have the capacity to do that. The restriction is as long as the individuals that are or residents of the housing development are going to use it, then it's okay. I'll come back to this because I know there's maybe some discussion on that, which is form of public facilities corporation. That's a 2-hour discussion in and of itself. So, but I don't want to skip it. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. Resolution by governing body of the municipality. So the presiding officer, which is the mayor, that will appoint the board members. Initially, one appointee would be designated as the chair. Municipal employees or officials are ineligible to serve. So in other words, anybody that's employed by the city or any elected or appointed official are not eligible to be placed on this. All powers of the corporation are vested with the appointed board. In other words, unlike, say, P&Z, where they have certain decision-making process, but at the end has to come back to the governing body to get final approval. All powers of the corporation are vested with the appointment of these board members. They would not have to come back to the governing board of the city in order to get approval. Now, there are some type of development projects, such as the low-income housing tax credit program, those type of things, that have requirements to get city approval, or not necessarily approval, but I guess it basically would be approvals for getting points and that type of thing. So there is some, in some instances where you would come back and get letters of, again, non-objection, that type of thing. Next slide, please. Okay, under state law, it's considered a public corporation and a unit of government. As such, it is subject to the Texas Open Records, Open Meetings, and procurement laws. And we may have a disagreement on this, but based on what I saw from the Texas Housing Association, it would be designated under federal law as a 501c3. That's what they have on their website, subject to what you need to put in your bylaws to make sure that it is designated as that. So it is exempt from all taxing entities, but no authority to levy taxes. In other words, unlike a school district, a municipality, a county government, it is a unit of government, but it has no authority to levy taxes. It is completely tax exempt from all taxing entities, local, state, and federal. It pays no taxes. Its area of operation is operated within the city limits plus 5 miles outside of the city limits. However, it's anticipated that the vast majority, due to the need to be able to tie in, especially you're talking about large multifamily developments, to be able to tie into water and wastewater in the city, the vast majority of any developments taken on would probably, it's going to be within the city or immediately adjacent to it. Next slide, please. The board can employ a secretary treasurer who would act as an executive director. However, it could be, if need be, a fully volunteer board, including a secretary treasurer. It's also not expected the corporation would directly operate any housing developments. The reason why is that it doesn't have 50 years of property management or program administration experience that most of these other housing authorities have acquired over the last 50 years. So the whole purpose of this is that if any lender or a equity investor or a developer is not going to turn over a $50 million project if you have no expertise in property management. So it would not. The good news is the whole point of this is not to create a big administrative monstrosity, but to keep obviously the operational administrative overhead down for this created entity. Next slide, please. The way these are formed is the whole point of establishing the housing authority. How am I doing on time, Mayor?
Three more minutes.
Okay. The unit of government, the public corporation, the housing authority, all one and the same, would enter into public-private partnerships with corporations where the corporation would act as a general partner. The corporation would engage other nonprofits to assist in missions subject to synergies and low-income assistance. So what I'm saying is they're going to develop through partnerships, but they're also going to, as part of their mission, is not only just sit back and develop, but as part of their mission, they are going to engage with other nonprofit entities within the community to support their missions with respect to those individuals in the community that are having issues with their housing and other areas. So it's kind of a twofold. Next slide. And again, there's no direct funding mechanisms that exist to support operations and administration of the corporation. It will not run public housing. It will not run Section 8. As such, it gets no administrative funds flowing in that most other housing authorities would do. So it's either going to have to operate voluntarily on a pure voluntary basis, or it's going to have to find its own source of funding for its administration. By Local Government Code 393, the first year of operations, it is the responsibility of the city to assess what the first year's operating expenses are going to be and to loan, not give, but to loan that amount of money to the housing authority from funds that are not already appropriated. So either you can do it through a rainy day fund, if you do it immediately, or you would wait till your next budget cycle to put it in the. So what's the asset? Again, I talked about the forming these partnerships, okay? And why are partnerships formed, okay? Well, partnerships are formed because one group has certain assets and certain expertise that another group has certain assets and certain expertise that are different. And in order to do 1 + 1 = 3, is that these two groups will come together, okay? So what is the basic, what is the asset that the unit of government has at its disposal? Its primary is that it is completely exempt from ad valorem property taxes. That's where a public facilities corporation comes in. And without getting in the weeds, if you're not subsidizing rents, you have to reduce the cost of the development and operating overhead in order to reduce your rents to a point where individuals of low income can afford them. So what the housing authority would provide is entering into this partnership is that they would maintain ownership of the underlying land. And as such, the land and the improvements would maintain its ad valorem property tax exemption. So it would reduce the annual operating overhead because they're not paying property taxes. So because they're not paying property taxes means that they can reduce the rents to cover their expenses. Additionally to that, they are also authorized to introduce or initiate private activity bonds to finance projects. The housing authority is a separate legal entity. Any loans or bonds or any type of financing or loans that is incurred by the unit of government, the city is not liable for any of it. It is a separate legal entity. So if they go out and they go borrow money or issue a bond, the city is not on the hook. That is stated specifically in local government code 392. So the city is not at risk, okay? The due diligence on these projects is incredibly severe with respect to compliance and making sure that their credit worthiness. But I can tell you, it's from an investor's point of view, one of the best things you can invest in is affordable housing because of the demand is so great. There are you've got waiting lists that are years long. So the chance of them going belly up is mainly due more to the inability of the property management company to do what they're supposed to do than the demand. How you do this is, again, going back to the Public Facilities Corporation. If you're interested, you can look that up. That's under local government code 303, which is a public facilities law. Okay. Any unit of government can establish a public facilities corporation. The city can, the county can, school district can, a MUD can, housing authority can. Think of it as a holding company, and there is a special purpose or a special project that they want to accomplish. So, and they want to have a separate legal entity to be completely focused on this one particular project or development. So they establish this Public Facilities Corporation to say, hey, okay, we do 10 things, but we're going to set you up to do as like an affiliate where I want you to focus exclusively on this one particular mission, and some of the authority that we have vested in us through the state statutes, we're going to convey to you, which is the tax exemption. So in order to convey through a partnership a tax exemption for improvements on a leasehold, and again, this is, I'm getting a little wonky here, but you have to use the local government code 303, which is a public facilities corporation. It's really the legal responsibility. If a housing authority owned the land and owned all the improvements, in other words, there's no partnerships, you weren't putting it into another entity, there would be no need for a public facilities corporation for the tax exemption. But if you're entering into a partnership and there is in the partnership, the housing authority doesn't necessarily own the improvements outright, then you have to use the local government code 303, the public facilities corporation, to do that.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Getting a little bit into the weeds, if
I
I
know,
can see.
yeah, I know it's
yeah.
or not big.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Van.
Yeah.
Leonard Bench, would you mind coming up to the, yeah. Want to record you for immemorial.
Thank you. It was a long take. First of all, I apologize for my allergies. I seem to be struck, and even though the kaleidoscope of self-induced drugs is not working very well, so I apologize. My name is Leonard Bench. I live in the city. I have been active in the Habitat for Humanity for the past many years, and currently serve as the president of the board of directors. So I'm really here to talk a little bit about our story, what Habitat does, and how I think some type of a housing authority might be helpful to us. And I hope that you will go along with it. We are currently the only provider of affordable homes for our working families in our community, and we have been that way since our organization, which was in 1994. Since then, we have built 18 new homes and renovated 2 new homes and performed critical repairs on the Boys and Girls Club and the FPCA. Ours is actually quite a success story. Of the 18 homes that we have built, 5 families have paid off their mortgages, and 5 additional families will complete paying off their mortgages by 2027. That's because the original mortgages were 20 years. All of the adults in our Habitat families are fully employed, often with 2 jobs. All the families, at least in the past 5 homes that we built, have school-aged children. All the other families had school-aged children, but they grew up, which is a good thing. A work profile of our last 5 homes includes a furniture worker, a warehouse worker, a cook, a tree trimmer, a random worker, a teacher's aide who had to stop work because of childcare expenses, a cabinet maker, a medical assistant, and a bank teller. They are the people who help us every day in the lives that we live in this county. Habitat does not just build homes. We are also a mortgage company and a mortgage servicing company. Each month, we collect from our homeowners payments to cover the mortgage principal, as well as their insurance and taxes. Like all mortgage servicers, we estimate the taxes and insurance costs for the next year, and then we adjust the required monthly payments. We're all familiar with that. Habitat is supposed to be a self-perpetuating home builder. The combined annual mortgage payments that we receive from existing loans are supposed to provide the funds to build the next house. That's a great plan. Currently, our mortgage loan balance is $545,623.07. After 2027, when only 7 loans are outstanding, our mortgage balance will be $515,894.08 for 7 properties. That tells you something about the cost of building the last 7 houses, right? Even with volunteers and a sales tax exemption, the cost of building our last home in 2020 was $275,000. Our most recent estimate is that the cost today for the exact same house would be over $300,000. To further complicate the financial picture for our families, our mortgage servicing information that we have every month documents that the monthly cost of insurance, taxes, and utilities is well over $800 a month for our families. So Habitat families undergo a thorough selection process to be sure that they can pay the mortgage, maintain the home, and invest the required 300 hours of sweat equity in lieu of a down payment. The rules are that family income must be less than 80% of the area median income. We heard that term AMI, area median income. That's not the average, it's the half. It's the half make less and half make more. In addition to that, and that number is $61,500 about in your investment account. In addition, total housing costs can be no more than 30% of monthly gross income. Any more than 30% of gross income was considered the cost burden by your house, or we would call house poor. If you do the math, the total housing costs in a Habitat family that hits to 80% of AMI, the total housing cost, that is mortgage, principal, insurance, taxes, and utilities, can be no more than $1,230 a month. But in reality, after we deduct auto and consumer debt, most families only have $900 to $1,000. And you're actually, how can that be? Well, the deal is our mortgages are interest free. Right. So we actually, when we make a mortgage, we actually discount the present value down over 30 years, and it's worth about not much. But anyway, we still hold the mortgage payments. So as you can see, there is a conflict between total housing costs and family income. It pretty much precludes even modest single-family homes in Fredericksburg, Texas. Yet, these Habitat families are good neighbors. All had or have school-age kids. All the adults work more than full-time in jobs that are important to our community. Last week, the Texas legislature passed House Bill 1704 that authorized $15 million for affordable housing. In addition to that, the bill, if its goes passes the Senate, will also increase the allowed family income from 60 to 80% of AMI. And that will also include the bootstrap program, which is another Texas Department of Housing program that we access to help finance our mortgage system. We believe that a local housing district would be very helpful to our mission. The district will be able to coordinate development among different providers, attract donors and grants, decrease the cost by volume purchasing of materials, and really importantly, allow us to leverage our funds by accessing larger financial sources such as those emanating from HB7 and other TDH funds, federal or state grants. That's my story. Thank you for being a part of our success story. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Leonard, when's the last time y'all built a house?
2020, we closed October the 1st of 2020. We were going to, I'm sorry, my bad. We were going to build a house this year, but the costs were so great and the cost of living were so great, they all went over the requirements that we have to have it.
Thank you.
Charlie Keeney?
Thank you. Leonard, that was well done, thank you. Am I supposed to speak in the mic?
Please.
Doesn't work.
I'm Charlie Keeney, I'm a citizen of Fredericksburg for the past 72 years, I believe. But anyway, I want to thank the council for having this workshop for citizens here in Fredericksburg. Vince, I think you did another good job tonight. I think the mud cleared down to dark water for me. And this is a very dynamic situation for the city and for the citizens of Fredericksburg. You know, first of all, I want you to know I do believe in affordable housing. I'm probably one of the only landlords in Fredericksburg that has two quadruplexes who, over the years, my rent now for 850 square foot apartment is still under $800. So, am I a believer in trying to afford? But I'm a private citizen doing that, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm proud. Most of my tenants have been there 10, 15, and 20 years. And because of the affordability of it. A lot of questions were answered tonight. The thing that I'm concerned about is the housing authority having the ability to do the public facilities corporation. That, and you did a good job tonight. You know, tax exempt, and I presume that's school, city, and county, and other tax entity here in our city. And I understand the cost of building and keeping them down so that the rents, would be affordable, or even for a home to be affordable in Fredericksburg. I am a realtor here, so I'm very much aware of the market. And what concerns me there is taxpayers, and you don't want to call it subsidizing, but we will be subsidizing these affordable homes or apartments with our county tax money that we're not receiving from these entities of millions and millions of dollars. I think the citizens know that our property tax generates not a significant portion, but a good portion of our budget every year. So that could be some loss generated money. The thing that concerns me too is a question you probably can't answer tonight. 5 miles out, and I agree, you probably won't find a subdivision out there that's gonna go 5 miles out. My concern is if it is adjacent to the city and it's not in the city limits, or it's just outside the adjacent city limits, they're gonna want water and sewer. And you probably can't answer it tonight. Who's gonna pay for that? Infrastructure to get there, and more importantly, who's gonna maintain it and repair it as many years go by, because those things do wear out. So that's a concern as well. I know this is an important issue, and you've heard me say this many times, it's kicking the can down the road. On previous councils that I was on, it was kicked down the road many times. We had another consultant come in and provide us good information on household income and what you report. Everything I'm hearing is apartments. I'm not really hearing residential single-family ownership. So is that attainable? And I think you've already alluded to it. But I would share with you, there's probably lenders out there, FHA and first-time home buyers, they could probably get under that 20%. And so I wouldn't want somebody not to try to buy a home and not talk to a lender in that regard. One of the questions that I do have, is, could the city look at zoning? And I'll share a story. My son bought a home in Houston. He said, Dad, it's 1,800 square foot. It's on a 1,200 square foot lot. Man, that just didn't make sense. So how does that work? Well, it's 3 stories tall, and his backyard was not much bigger than a couple of pool tables. So I think that's an issue that the city might want to look at in future subdivision rules and regulations and reducing the size of city lots and giving an opportunity of denser lot density there. What I really hope, this is an important and complex issue. I think anybody listening to it this evening will understand that it is. I've done a lot of reading on it, and so I'm certainly nowhere near wanting to say I'm an expert in all the things. And I think Vince, you alluded to that on occasion. It's a complex deal. I know the passion is here for this council, or at least 2 of the members of the council, to get this on the agenda for approval for next week. It may 2nd or 6th. Anyway, I would say slow down a little bit. Have another workshop or 2, get out that information on taxes, and I think you did a good job on that. I think the citizens of Fredericksburg need to know that their tax money would not be coming from these entities. And I think the Public Facilities Corporation, and I think I've sent an article from the Austin Business Journal, and they may be improving, but I know there are lots of loopholes that they can work their way through. Taking great advantages of cities and other entities because they're able to do that. So thank you for your time. Please don't rush this, I know it's kind of kicking the can down the road, but this is a very important issue that the citizens of Fredericksburg need at best to completely understand how it affects them. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Mayor, would it be all right if we answer questions as it goes along, so we don't have a pile up of maybe redundant questions?
Sure.
Would that be okay?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, just Charlie, thank you for your comments. And again, I respect everybody's opinions on this matter. I know, again, especially if you're not involved in it and immersed in it like I am on a day-to-day basis, it can get a little bit distracting. So certainly there is a need for affordable single family home ownership. Subject, however, to the mission of this entity. It is created to serve those individuals primarily that are 80% or below of average median income for the community. It is absolutely impossible for any type of program, unless you want to basically give a house away to put an individual at that income level. So the only option for those individuals is higher density multifamily rental. As far as additional costs that may be incurred with respect to the installation of adjacent utility infrastructure to a particular public housing, not public housing, but an affordable housing development. There are a variety of methods I know in discussing with certain entities in those discussions is that a lot of times they're not looking to the city for the cost of running lines out to, in other words, if there needs to be a water line run, wastewater line run 300 yards to the development, they factor that into the cost of the development. There's also opportunities such as the community development block grant for rural communities. This region has on an annual basis approximately $350,000 that it provides in grant funding for various communities, and that's rural region 9. So if anybody's familiar with the COG, there is money available that you can basically say, hey, we would like this grant. And the grant basically is subject to infrastructure that would be needed to support individuals, low income individuals. And that's the key is like the eligibility is like, okay, what's this money being used for? Well, we've got affordable housing development supporting individuals at 60% or below of average median income. And so we are requesting this grant to use to help defray the cost of getting water lines. So there's a variety of methods to do that. So these developers come up to this all of the time. And if they are expecting these municipalities to put the bill for this stuff, it's great, but they are modeling these developments so that they are not reliant on these to sponsor municipality to carry a burden on this. They are trying to come in independently as much as possible. There's a lot of affordable housing development that's going in without any support from the community, without any participation from a housing authority. It's just got to the point where, especially for Fredericksburg, not only as a development entity, but just as I mean, there's a reason why the word authority is placed in this. The expectation of the state is that, hey, the housing authority is here to be your one-stop shop for all of your housing needs. And it's not just for one thing, which is again, the development low-income housing. It can be used for a variety of methods. So, we can cuss and discuss. It's a personal view on how your tax dollars or the lack of tax or the usage of tax exemptions to support the development of affordable housing. That is something that each individual in each community needs to come to grips with. I do not live here, and I've said from day one, I'm not recommending or not recommending that. That needs to be something that is discussed specifically within the community. I can tell you also, Charlie, that article that you had alluded to, there was one group, it's called the Texas Essential Housing, that took advantage of some of the loopholes in the public facilities law, where they were basically going out of their territorial jurisdiction and coming into other units of government, stomping grounds, and developing these markets, sometimes market rates, sometimes not, but they were taking the tax exemption and taking the money that they were getting, the benefits of the tax exemption, and taking that money into their own district. So there are 7 House bills right now that have been presented to close that loophole. But what I can tell you, the other concern is that they were taking advantage and using that local government code 303 to have tax exemptions on market rate units, not just affordable. So that does not apply to a housing authority. The local government code 303 as it exists now. If a public facilities corporation is created by a housing authority, then a minimum of half the units in the development must be reserved for people making 80% or less of the average median income. So there is an affordability requirement already built in to the code, doesn't necessarily need to be changed. And statutorily, the housing authority is required to stay within their area. And if they ever decided they wanted to go out of the area, just like the Texas Housing Foundation did recently, is as a unit of government, if you're going into somebody else's territory, then you must ask permission and get into a cooperative agreement with that entity. So those issues that were raised really don't apply to the issues with respect to a housing authority sponsored public facilities corporation.
All right. Wes Hester?
Don't have my thoughts in order, more questions than anything. And we thank you for spending time with me and sending me information. So I can read on it. Admittedly, don't really understand this subject very well in depth. And I don't want to speak for people, but I feel like there are a lot of questions about specifically what the vision is for this. Who are we trying to serve? And traditionally, one of the best vehicles for people to build wealth and better circumstance for themselves is through the vehicle ownership, where they are building equity in time. What concerns me about what we're talking about here, and I understand the economics of it, is that we're not really helping the people that we're setting out to help build that equity as I'm hearing. Now, maybe I'm misunderstanding something here, but that to me is going to bring in the most help to the teachers who we want to target and bring in here. Some of the other workers that are desperately needed, like the firefighters and stuff. I don't know if they're the subject matter of this, the main focus to kind of help get some of those folks in here. But I would imagine for them, we want to build a vehicle that gives them some equity, so in time they can move up and they can grow well and they can stay a part of the community. I like your last point in your report. There's some creativity that can come into play here. I'd love to hear more about that. And I really hope that there are more workshops and that we will have more discussion and really focus in on it. Maybe the budget's a great opportunity to kind of lay out the plans for how that housing authority would be envisioned in that first year and some of the initiatives, but specifically, what are you trying to address here and how are you going about it? I mean, are we going to create a public facilities corporation in conjunction with the ISD? Is that one of the vehicles in mind here? What level of interest does the council have in community development corporations? Is that a viable vehicle? Finance corporations, is that an area of interest? I think for the investors who would get involved in this is a great deal. They get coupon payments. They're making money. They're getting paid back. But again, it comes back to how is it helping the people we're setting out to address? And that's really where I would like to hear a little bit more, understand a little bit more about what's going on. And hopefully we don't, go and vote and just do this next city council meeting, that we're a little bit more deliberative about the process and transparent with everything that's going on, because it's always the unintended consequences. Great thought, great idea to want to help people, but thinking through the consequences of every step and all the things associated is a very complex and laborious situation. And I'll say, I've been to cities that are heavily into the tourism business, like Aspen and Vail, and I talked to people there who are in the service industry. Where do you work? Where do you live? They have affordable housing. A lot of these people were living well outside of town, down the interstate, in massive trailer complexes. I mean, it's like you see it, and it's a mile long of just trailer complexes, and that's where these people ended up being, because the cost of living in the town was just too much. And maybe we can get creative there. If you live here in Fredericksburg, it's on your ID. Maybe the businesses here would agree to give people who are residents here a discount. They're making money off tourism, but give the local residents a discount. That promotes more affordability. And I think if we have more discussion, people will have great ideas that may be a benefit that could be considered. And really going back to your report, Michael, I just love in the conclusion, I'll read it real quick, just because I like that one sentence. Commit to new ways of thinking beyond traditional roles and attitudes. I love that. So that's just my thoughts at the moment. Sorry, they're kind of a little bit scattered, but
Okay.
appreciate your time.
Thanks for
Thank
your
you, Wes.
comments. It's difficult to say exactly what are all the components that the housing authority would do. And the main reason is because of what I had put up on the screen is that the full authority of this corporation will fall on its appointed board. So this unit of government and mayor and council have the authority to establish it and appoint those board members, and then it's the board members' responsibility to come up with the articles of corporation, the bylaws, the policies, the missions, all of those things. So I wish I could tell you exactly what it would entail, but that is will be determined at a later date, because quite frankly, there can be a guidance subject to what the mission is and conveyed to these appointed members, but no authority to force them to act in any way, shape, or form. I think quite frankly, I agree with that approach, because once a housing authority is established with a particular mission, the rising and falling of political interest and differences of opinion do not reflect on the performance and the mission of the housing authority. It has a particular mission that it maintains its focus on, regardless of the turmoil or issues surrounding it. So as far as that home ownership thing, again, I'm first in that line. I will say that probably one of the best ways to set somebody up for sex to prepare them for home ownership is having them being able to afford a rent that would allow them to pay their rent and have enough money to save over so that they can afford a down payment. If you have somebody that's paying 50 to 60% of their take-home pay to rent, then they will never have the opportunity to be able to income qualify or get ahead. So the whole point of making sure that these individuals are not overpaying, whether it's at market or affordable, is for that very purpose. There is a transition. I did not go out and buy my first house until I was after 30 years old. It took a process of getting married and saving money and going through that step. And so it takes time. And the best way to do that, again, is to make sure that their day-to-day, again, I've just noticed that, the average car note now in the United States is $700. So you couple a high rent with a car note, with student loans, it's virtually impossible for these new generations to have the opportunity, the financial opportunity. They could be the hardest workers in the world, but it's almost getting to a point where it's just impossible for them to do that. So,
All right, Todd?
Thank you, Mayor, Council, staff. Todd Edson, I live in Fredericksburg, also own and operate a business in the city, and I'm honored to be on the board of directors of the Fredericksburg Chamber of Commerce. As a business owner and as a representative of the chamber, I can tell you, as you didn't know already, the lack of affordable housing, workforce housing, has a direct impact on my business. And the vast majority of the 900 businesses that the chamber represents. So I'm gonna read a quote here. The median income in Fredericksburg cannot support the mortgage on the current inventory of houses that are available here. We are losing out on young families, and a good number of people who are employed in Fredericksburg are struggling. End quote. Anybody know who that was? Fredericksburg Mayor Gerald Hoover, Saturday, July 19th, 2008, in the San Antonio Business Journal. So here we are, 15 years later. Here in the story, high prices have caused recruiting problems for the Fredericksburg Independent School District. Same story, over and over and over again. Fast forward, March 2023, our own paper quoted Anna Hudson comp plan. Affordable housing is the #1 issue. So, sorry, Charlie, but we're kicking the can down the road every single year, right? Chamber Affordable Housing Share 2017, we have a problem. EDC Housing Demand Study for City of Fredericksburg, we have a problem. Path to the Future. Do you know how much affordable housing is mentioned in there?
Pretty much every page.
We fortunately get Vince, 24-page study. We're kicking the can down the road. What? I had the opportunity to chit chat with the mayor beforehand, and he said, "Man, I'm tired of meetings." So we want a meeting. How many more meetings do we need to have? 15 years. Right, it's been going on longer, but you're quoted 15 years ago. So we're gonna need some more. So I think taking great courage in bringing up this now, we need to vote on it next week. Thanks.
Thank you, Todd. You can block, that's fine. Mo, Saidi?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I think everything that I'm about to say, everybody has said it, but I put it in a different perspective. I think if I listen, the gentleman that was talking about and Charlie, what citizens are we trying to support? Because I've sat through the city council many times, and I thought the whole problem was getting police officers, firefighters, teachers, the professionals who we need to come in here and stay here and work in here. And from what I'm understanding from what Mr. Lynn says, those are really ruled out with this criteria and everything that is laid out. So they wouldn't be able to do it. They wouldn't be able to do first residential housing in this category. I think that we're talking about 392, because the 80% percentile for the income is gonna leave them out of this process. I think that's what I'm hearing. So if that's the case, and we're not really able with this project to support this group of people, then we haven't really done the right thing. That's said many different ways, I think, from what I understand it. The other thing is, I, just like anyone else, I'm learning these things. I downloaded 392 and I've been poring over it and so forth and trying to get educated myself. The thought occurred to me, if we are ever going to have another workshop, wouldn't it be judicious to have some of our local cities that have these things and their representatives to come here and give us lessons learned from their experiences? And it would be wonderful to hear it if they have that. I heard that Johnson City has one, London has one, and I don't know what other cities have the housing authority. Perhaps some of those commissioners can come over here and tell us exactly how they have been operating and doing that kind of a thing. So I think that would be valuable to do and learn from their lessons.
So that's all I have to say. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Mel.
Great idea.
Sylvia likes it.
Do we have the data of how many city, county, school employees make 80% or below of AMI? I'd be curious to know.
Tom Musselman, you have an answer?
I believe the starting salary for FISD for 0-year teachers, $43,000.
The average.
The average is about 60,000.
Well,
Wait a minute. We have Dr. Williams here to help us with that.
the new teacher, so the $43,000 new teacher that we hire that's at 71% of our current AMI. So they could
71. Okay.
71, so they could qualify, but they couldn't get married.
Put that
Okay,
in there.
because then if you've got two new teachers, that's
Oh, I see.
$86,000 a year, and they don't qualify, so. You know, I think the one thing that I would encourage when we're looking at this, I think we need to look at the good things. But I think we also need to be aware of the things that might not be so good. And the other thing is that I think we need, as a former teacher, I'm very aware of Chapter 49 and what that does to the Fredericksburg and the school district. When our value per student goes up, the amount of money we send to Austin goes up. So I think that anything that we do we need to do this in conjunction with the school district. We also need to do it in conjunction with the county. Okay. I was very disturbed to hear tonight that a municipal utility district can create a PSC. I did not know that when that came before the Planning and Zoning Commission. Yeah. Now we have a MUD. And so from what I heard tonight, it said that a MUD can create a PSC. I will defer to our city attorney on that.
Can you say in a couple of sentences why that disturbs you?
Well, because the MUD, okay, the MUD is not you. The MUD is not an elected official. The MUD is giving a tax, is taking tax revenue off by giving an exemption without the input to our public officials that are up there subject to our Republican.
So they're able to use money that's provided them because they're a MUD. Because they have that special district. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Okay.
And they're taking tax dollars off of
Yeah.
city tax
Yeah.
and all the.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. 71% of AMI is a starting teacher
Yeah.
range.
One thing I would,
743.
The average, I actually got some of that data from the business assistant superintendent before I came over here. So on the lower end of our pay scale, we've got custodians taking home about 22,000 a year. And then, but our average across our teachers right now is 48,000. That's not the starting pay or the top pay. That's the average is right at about 48,000.
Okay, thank you.
one thing I want to mention with respect, because when we're talking about percentages of AMI, going back to the statute, is the statute reads that the housing authority can assist those individuals that the board of the housing authority determines that cannot afford decent and safe housing within that community. So if they wanted to assist individuals up to 120% and could justify that in this community, they could do that. What happens is the supporting programs like the tax credit program and other things, most of those programs have income restrictions built in. But the housing authority can take advantage of, again, their tax exemption to incentivize a developer to come in and target a specific, that missing middle that I was talking about, that it's not substantially discounted, but it's not market, but we're gonna give, we're gonna partner with this developer to bring in a development that it hits a sweet spot for a particular income cohort. Because if you're only dealing with one specific income cohort and you're not dealing with all of them, then your spectrum of housing is going to fail. Like I said, the best way to do it is try to get it in the middle so that people can go up and down. But it does have the ability to service individuals. And again, that is going to be the determination of the board. But I can tell you that the housing costs here in Fredericksburg are so high that I could see the possibility that the housing authority board would make a determination that they may not stop at 80%, that they may go beyond even into the 90 or 100% to assist in what I would call near market rate developments that would hit again some of these areas of income cohorts as well.
All right, that's all the people who signed up to comment.
One question.
Sure.
What's the difference between this as a vehicle, the Public Housing Authority versus like a CDC, a Community Development Corporation as a vehicle? And so I'm just asking, is this the only option available to us? Are there other options available that can assist with housing rather than just this one type? My concern is about basically outsourcing to an independent board and getting a runaway board that then we don't have any say over or any control over, and there's no recourse for city council to correct it if we make a mistake in our board selection.
The recourse again on the statute is that if a board member goes rogue and does not comply with the bylaws and the policies established by the original board, then they can be removed. So they have.
But if it's the whole board and they rewrite the bylaws in a direction that was not intended.
They still have to comply with the state statutes that can limit their capacity in essence to go rogue and to do things beyond what is intended. So again, there's very restrictive on what they can and cannot do. And even subject to the establishment of a public facilities corporation and what it can and cannot participate in. The housing authority was simply one.
That versus a CDC, is there?
Yeah, the CDC, the development of a local CDC was one of the other things that I had mentioned in the housing study. The housing study had a whole laundry list of things, okay? It wasn't an either or, like either do this or that, okay? The expectation is that if you've got such a problem, then, you may need to take a look at every single one of those recommendations and try to implement it as much as possible. What I will tell you is that a CDC as envisioned is a nonprofit, in essence, with the same mission. Very few communities at this size have CDCs because they rely exclusively on donations to support their mission. And typically a community of this size does not have the capacity to support that. When you're talking about multi-million-dollar housing developments and things like that, it's just typically not. It could potentially be looked at, but again, a 21st century model of a rural housing authority will take the components that a CDC would potentially do, such as the fact that it is a unit of government. Typically, people would not say, I'm going to go donate my money to a unit of government, right? It's like, that's a unit of government. They get their money from taxes and I'm staying out. So the housing authority is a hybrid. Okay, it's a charitable organization under the federal, IRS as a 501c3. So it should be set up and not create a burden either through its sponsor or through its full tax exemption, but expect the community to participate and financially participate and support that organization. So I want it to be understood that that I expect it to be that way in this community. That it's not to be completely solely the responsibility of the units of government, okay? If you expect that, it will fail, okay? It needs a volunteer board, mission critical, maybe an advisory board. Coordination and communication with the needs council. And I could just go on, with all the faith-based organizations, okay? There must be synergies created, okay? And the best way to do that is through a entity that the state of Texas is saying, if you look at 392 and 393, there's no ambiguity of what the expectations of the state of Texas is with respect of a unit of government subject to a municipality and the formation and the implementation of a housing authority in the community.
Okay, I want to hear from the council. Would you mind giving us your high-level responses, questions, comments, recommendations? Where are you? Mr. Edson would like to see us move forward. What's your response to what you've heard? Where are you on this?
Let me say, number one, and I'm now well aware of it, for 30 years or more, we've worked on this. I have worked on this, and we always talk about affordable housing. You're giving me the answer that I've said for years. We just can't do that. So we're looking at an apartment project, which is a different deal. I've got concerns like some of the others that are we knocking out professionals, young professionals. Well, when I got out of college, my first job, I rented an apartment for a while before I could afford a house. We understand that. The point being is that we are trying to, it looks like you're trying to put the people that we call maybe the workers on Main Street or various restaurants and what else, a place to live. Now, some of the young professionals might come in too, like the teachers and nurses. But I've got concerns about, number one, I think we're rushing into this thing. Why are we doing it immediately? We need to understand a little bit more about the authority. Y'all been on this commission. I appreciate working with that. And you know a lot more than we do. But I'm concerned about forming an authority that doesn't necessarily have to answer to anybody. And that scares me. And you sit there and tell, well, there's guidelines and what else. Well, we all know if you break the law, you still got to go through a trial and a jury and what have you. How long does it take to remove those people? So that concerns me. I think I'm not against this. I think it's a good idea, but I do think that, and I'm sure Mick's going to have to draw up the corporation agreements and what have you, but I'm kind of on the deal. One more, I think this meeting is good. We've learned a lot tonight, but I'm still say, let's take the slower road. We can wait a month and get this done or whatever, but we don't need to do it next Tuesday. That's my concern.
I still have more questions than answers. Did you say that if we formed a public housing corporation, form a housing authority, that would have to be multifamily housing? And
No, the restriction is on who you're serving. So you're serving persons of low income. So just a fact of life is that a person at a particular income level would never be able to afford a home ownership. So because of that, then you're looking at multifamily rental properties that would be, the housing authority would be developing. But that doesn't mean that they would not, assist and get involved with habitat or high density home, there's rent homes. There, in other words, there is they're trying to recreate themselves right now. So some of these things that are best practice modeling that some of these other communities are doing, you can take a look at with respect to the home ownership, but you're looking at, I mean, what the average cost of a house here, I just said, I just mentioned the Lennar development. So even at 325,000, 70% of the workforce here cannot afford that. So spending all your time and effort, beating your head up against the wall, these are macroeconomic environment factors that is impossible for the local community to affect change in a substantial manner. So you either don't do anything, okay, or you say, look, we've got a community here that is predominantly agricultural based, retail trade and leisure and hospitality, okay? That is the vast majority. That is who you are, okay? Those are traditionally the lowest paying income groups industry wise, okay? So you are who you are. And so you're responding to that fact of life with respect to matching the housing to the incomes that you have. Are you going to change overnight in the next 10 years to high tech and, engineers and, and all that stuff? I don't think so. So you're basically responding to an established need. And again, that goes with respect to the rental.
So the answer is no, it's not just multifamily.
It doesn't have to
So-
be. Does
What
not
I'd really
have
like to know, is there a way to incorporate the great success of Habitat for Humanity and the thing that we know about home ownership, and could something, because Habitat is stymied here by the expense of the dirt.
Yeah.
So I'm just dreaming, I'm just trying to get the broad picture of everything. So you have a housing authority, can it work with Habitat for Humanity?
Yes.
Bring the cost of the dirt down, and people can have the sweat equity, and then they own their homes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I will also say one other thing of it, since we're talking about Habitat is, okay, their models failed, okay, so they can't do it here, they can't do it elsewhere. They are in the process of changing their model. So this, small lot, single family home model, okay, they've abandoned that because it no longer works. So if you're looking into Austin and other communities, what they're looking at is they're looking at a higher density product such as townhome type of product,
But then you
which is still
homeowner.
it's still home ownership, okay? Condominium type of product. So it's either do that, change your concept or don't build homes.
So can I ask Dr. Bench, is that a concept that would work here for Habitat?
Yeah, we've talked about that,
Yeah.
and that is the new model.
Yeah.
And we have a model called shared equity, which is involved with this, but yes.
Thank you,
Exactly.
thank you.
I'd like to say, I have two friends that lived in a community in Austin, and they were counseled to achieve financial wellness. They were in debt and could not afford a home, and they lived in this community and worked with counselors, and then were able to afford down payments on houses. Then so that's like an ancillary program that could work with this.
So you're saying like they lived in a housing project?
Mhm.
Anything else, Sharon? I mean,
Yeah, my other question
I'm
is
not
a
cutting you off,
concern for, are you representing the school district?
Yes, ma'am.
So you have a trade-off, you lose the ad valorem tax that the school district gets, but you have homes for starting teachers to live. How does the school district see that trade-off?
Well, right now, we can't get teachers because we don't have a place for them to live. I mean,
So that's a higher concern than the ad valorem tax that would be lost by these projects not paying school district taxes.
it would be a higher concern for the district to not have teachers to teach our children than to taking from the tax loss. I mean, that is a concern. It's always a concern when we lose income.
Sure.
Always a concern.
Especially since you have to send so much of it away.
Correct, correct. But right now, we have an issue of we find teachers and we get them down to the signing point and they come to us and say, well, I really want to live here, but there's no place to live here. So I'm going to take a job in
Yeah.
Kerrville or someplace close where they're still in the hill country, but it's not Fredericksburg. So it's a very real issue. I mean, not only in teachers, but in support staff too. So particularly our support staff, I mean, we're down 10 custodians this year for the same reason. So
Appreciate your input. I appreciate your being.
It was explained to me that the because the school district is returning money, that they need more students. That way they retain more money. And the increase in the population here with regard to age, okay, the school age children is not, their increase as far as a percentage is not what it should be. In other words, there are a lot more elderly people not with school age children moving here as opposed to an increase in the same relationship as a percentage.
Comment?
That's what we found during when we did the bond campaign, we found that, you know, it was a very small percentage of the population even had school age children. I mean, it was well below 50% had school age children. So, and they have a hard time moving here because of the fact that they can't get housing, so.
Bobby? What would you say?
Working with Emily, I see this as another avenue for us to get housing that we direly need in this community. As someone mentioned in the comp plan survey and many other focus groups, number one issue in this town has been affordable housing and has been for years. We've asked the private sector to provide housing for their employees. We've had very little action on that. I know the Albert Hotel, which is a new project in town, they have bought an apartment complex to house employees. It's not enough for their whole employment, but they've taken action. We've talked about several things that Vince has brought to us, like a PFC, and being on council the last few years, there was never a real appetite to do that, to take property off the tax rolls, even if the property was ag exempt. And so we have been kicking this thing down the road, and I think we've got an opportunity here to at least try to make it a dent or to try to solve instead of just talking about it. Almost every service business in this town, plus school district, plus our police department, we're short employees. And I know HEB is short over 100 employees right now. I think it's closer to 150. Restaurants, the reason we have long waits, the reason that restaurants don't take reservations anymore, they don't have enough waiters to wait on us. So you can be in a long wait and look into a restaurant and see empty tables. Well, they don't have the staff to wait on you. So we need to assist there. We're down 7 police officers on the police force. We've got that in the budget. We've got equipment, we've got cars, we've got their salaries in the budget, but we can't find them because we don't have a place for them to live. So I'm very much in favor of this.
Penny, would you mind making a few comments about what you know, the labor shortage, how it impacts our business, our economy, because you would have a handle on that. Sorry to ask you to impromptu, but.
My name is Penny McBride. I'm the president and CEO of the Fredericksburg Chamber of Commerce, and workforce shortage remains the most pressing issue of our members across all industry clusters and has been for some time. And, you know, we talk about who we're solving the problem for, but workforce is a lot of things. So we do need to solve the problem for teachers and nurses, police officers, but we can't have a hospital that sees a nurse if you don't have an admissions person at the front desk that sees them, or a janitor that takes care of the room. You can't have a school district without maintenance staff and support staff. So we're solving, I think, that problem to be a successful community for far more than just professional roles, because all of it rolls together to create our economy. We all love the amenities that this community offers, and all of those amenities are offered by human people who provide service and value to the equation. So I think this is, you know, an important step to solving that challenge for our community. Those labor shortages are huge. So last week we hosted a job fair. We had 56 employers show up. That's exciting to me that 56 employers care about our students. It also makes a statement that 56 companies are willing to spend time and resources in hopes of maybe catching a high school job or two, right? That's not going to fix their problem. That's not only, I think, a vote for success, but it's also a vote of desperation, right? That they need people anywhere they can find them. And all of us need those businesses. Business has tried to solve the problem. Councilman Watson wisely pointed out that the commitment Albert Hotel has made, but I know numerous chamber members that they own rental houses, or they rent places, or they provide rent and gas subsidies to their employees. I mean, they're making it work. If you look on the tax rolls, you'll find numerous cases of business owners that have bought a house for their employees to live in as a measure to try to encourage longevity and retention among their workforce. So, and also businesses pay, an outsized share of property taxes and other support wages in this community. So without that, I think it's unfair to say they're not making an investment in the problem, because they make probably more investment than any other community sector.
Thank you, that was helpful. Emily?
First, I just want to thank everyone for being here and being so attentive and just wanting to be here to learn more. I've been in the weeds on this. I've been waking up early to read through this before my kids get up. And so I apologize if I'm a bit too laser focused on this, but I see our community continually want something different, want some affordable housing, but then we kind of throw our hands up and say, well, we'll just wait for the market to handle this. And as that has been proven many times, like that's not working. So this is a tool. This is one of many options. I apologize that it has taken so long for us to even get at this, because Vince wrote that report a year ago, and other fires have been going on that will not be mentioned here, but now we can talk about it. So let's get moving, whether it's, this is a great tool. There's also other things with, looking at TERS. We need to dive into that. Type B sales tax. What if we did that? There's so many good options that need discussing. As I've heard it explained, this is almost like air that we're creating with this entity, because then it could receive, different private donations or federal grants or whatever. It's just kind of laying the groundwork for future developments that are still a long ways out. It's not like we're going to form this and then we got a, apartment complex right away. This is, unfortunately, takes a long time to build and, find a good developer, find someone that, works well with our community in a good place on good land. So I don't view this as rushing it. And I understand and respect people who think differently. I just think this is laying the next step for what we need to do. I think we're past the tipping point in our community. As has already been mentioned, we bus people into work here. And what are we missing on having those families be able to be here instead of having to live in Kerrville, Llano, Comfort? Because those are kids that we aren't getting to have in our schools. And the ultimate goal of me as a city council person is not to squeeze every drop of tax dollars from every property I can. If we have to forego property tax on something that maybe is already tax exempt, or heck, maybe the city already owns it. Like, it's not like we're losing out. We're gaining in having people work here. So that's where I am.
Thank you.
I have a question about the forming air, and then we get a developer, that what you just said. So the board is appointed by the mayor. Then does that board stay in perpetuity, or is it change? Does it change with the mayor when the mayor?
It stays.
It's 2-year terms.
Okay.
And what they'll do is they'll stagger. I'm sorry, Nate, go ahead if you want.
Exactly what you're saying.
You will appoint a chairman who will be chair for 1 year. And then the initial appointments, so they'll be staggered. So you have the option of appointing 5, 7, 9, or 11 members. A lot of times what you do, and sometimes a 5-member housing authority board, the mayor elects to appoint additional, because if they're involved with a development, they may want expertise on that board. So they may want a banker. an architect, a CPA. So you're not looking at a group of social workers, you're looking at people who have, you know, high development expertise that you can call on to be able to understand substantially complicated partnerships with respect to what they're gonna be.
So then that board would meet with the developers and
Yes.
negotiate with the developers as to what they were going to develop and what they required from the city on that development. So we really are just creating, I like your term was a holding
Holding company, right.
corporation. That's better than air, Emily.
Here's how he who controls the land, in essence, controls the negotiation. Let's say an affordable housing developer went and put a piece of property under contract here. Okay, they would then come to the housing authority, say, hey, I just put this piece of property over here under contract and I want to do X, Y, and Z affordable housing, okay? And I want to partner with you, okay? Because I need your tax exemption so I can do it at reduced rents, okay? But let's say that you've got a piece of property that the city owns. And the city says, hey, we've got 10 acres over here that we want to convey over to the housing authority. And we want you to build affordable housing on it, okay? That's totally different because then the city and or the housing authority has control of the property. So then it would be the opportunity for the housing authority then to go and to do an RFQ, request for qualifications on a variety of developers. And who's gonna bring us, who's got the best track record, who does what they say they're gonna do, who are great operators, and who is going to provide some assistance in a partnership with the housing authority. So it always has to do with who, in essence, controls the land on the capacity of a housing authority to pick and choose who they elected to work with. It's different because under the state procurement requirements, if you're procuring goods and services, there is a certain requirements that you have to comply with, okay? But you're not complying, you're looking for a partner, you're not looking for a vendor, okay? So some of the required procurement methodology that you'd have to work through does not necessarily apply through the formations of the partnerships. But again, this is an open government. And so everything that we'll do will be out in the open and any information, meetings open, open records requests will all be available and it will be, I'm sure, as the clock ticks, we'll hit the newspaper and all that other stuff. So.
And I wanted to mention one more thing on that. This is something that's in chapter 392 that I thought was very compelling. It says, in planning a development, including site location, an authority shall consider the relationship of the project to a larger plan or long-range program for the development of the area, which I think speaks to some other developments we've seen that might not make sense. Like these people, it's very clear in statute that they need to be, operating within the rules and not just saying willy-nilly, here's a piece of property, let's build something big on it.
Todd mentioned a quote of mine from 2008. Actually, I said the very same thing when I first ran for mayor in 2006. And we have, at that time, we put together Tom will remember, and Tim Dooley, we put together a workforce or task force or special group or whatever to look at all of our options. And I remember that was 17 years ago. And the political will was not there. It was not there to deal with this at a level that would probably be anything meaningful. There wasn't the appetite for what we thought at the time was the only few options, which always revolved around government intervention with taxpayer dollars. People just did not want to even consider that. Not only in the public, but on the council, there just wasn't that desire to make that huge step. Now may be the time because we've lived through this many years without a meaningful solution. And also we've gotten a lot further down the line with the consequences of that, as Dr. Wim said. This may not be it, a housing authority. Vince, I want you to give me a brief answer.
Yeah.
In your,
I'm not incapable of.
in your report that you did a year ago, and we've been here a couple hours, so I want to make sure that we bring it to a close. A compelling section at the end, affordable housing financing sources and methods.
Yes.
And you list 4 federal and state options that are here. Low-income housing tax credit, I won't go over them because I won't take the time. And 7 particular local government funding and financing tools, including general obligation bonds, tax increment zones, et cetera, et cetera. I won't read them out, but I hope everybody will trust that there are 4 federal and 7 local, so forth. Is this, in your opinion, the best one of those 11? For
Well,
us?
this is a tool in order to take advantage of those.
Okay.
Okay.
So this would be, I'm not going to repeat what you said. You said it well. Okay. This council will do its due diligence on this. I have asked that we not put this on the agenda for next Tuesday. Because I'm struck by what Council Lady Joseph said. I have more questions than answers, and I did too. Because I lived with the common perception that a housing authority, and when you start talking about projects, those of us who grew up in the 60s and 70s, projects means one thing. You know, NYPD blue, go to the projects, whatever, all right? And what you're talking, and I needed to be educated that it's a development, and it can be a single family house development.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to say that Vince answered the questions that I had.
Okay, well, I was opting on your comment then, sorry. I'll just say that I have more questions than answers too. But let me tell you something that happened today. Tim Dooley gave me the number of John Schrock, who was here at the leadership breakfast.
Yes.
And John's father started a housing authority in McAllen 40 years ago. So obviously early 80s. And in a 40-minute conversation with him, I had a completely different view of what a housing authority is. And it's not what my perception was. It's not what my knee-jerk government solution, tax abatements, property off the rolls, unfair, poor people, etc. So my point in that is that in 30 minutes, I got some deep questions answered. I need more information before I know what to do. And I'm assuming that other people do. The other thing is I asked him, would you say, how key would you say it is that there be a really excellent education program out to the community to open their eyes the same way mine were open? It can still be voted down, but at least you have an informed decision and not your assumptions that I had. He said, I got to tell you, that is the key. You must let the people have the opportunity to ask the questions and know exactly what we're talking about. And he said, I think if you do a good job with that, most people in the community will go, that sounds like a good idea. That's what he said. And I liked whoever, I forgot now who mentioned that we might have, with Wes, was it you? So let's have some people here who do this. From other communities?
No, it was Mo's side.
Oh, no, okay,
I think that's a wonderful idea. I mean,
okay.
The more input,
Okay,
the better, because you have invested interest.
Right, I'll credit you with it. Mo's gone. But I like that idea too, and I'll bet you we could get that person from McAllen. He told me who their ED director or whatever, secretary treasurer, whatever it was.
Mayor, I can get that.
Okay.
That's who we affiliated.
And I would like for us to have a longer, broader, deeper, more comprehensive discussion before we pull any triggers. And it may not be next month, but I don't want to, let's keep this on the agenda. I'm happy to keep it on every
Am I
agenda.
understanding correctly that forming a housing authority is really not a trigger pull because you have no financial or moral obligations? It's just your only obligation then is to appoint a board, and then they would research any developments, and that's where the obligation is. I'm
Perhaps.
just asking, do I understand? I'm not disagreeing.
I don't know if you're right. I just know that I want to feel better
I'm
about
sorta
this
right.
decision from the council.
Now, no, part of the deal is I think Nick's gonna have to get involved.
Yeah, oh, sure. Sure. We got lots of things. Mark Mayfield, you had your hand up. Do you have a brief comment or?
just,
But Mark's with the Texas Housing Foundation, who did a project in Fredericksburg, how many years ago?
20 years ago.
20 years ago. It's the town plaza? Okay, go ahead.
I just, I've been doing this for 36 years. I live in Marble Falls, and so many of the demographics of the city of Fredericksburg and Marble Falls are so aligned. And with one exception, the real estate prices are a lot higher even than ours. Working over here, the people that work here, trying to provide workforce housing is just a complicated task. And I will tell you, the housing authority is not going to be the answer. It can be a part of the solution,
Right.
but it will not solve all problems.
Right.
It will be a strong, I have worked for years honing the public housing perception and perspective. I was here just last week, but, you know, it was not presented well. I hated to be in the sites of Benny, because that was not us. And I was able to make that point to the commissioners court, and I appreciated that. But, going through the process, I would, if welcomed by this council, I would love to be a part of that discussion with you. Got years and years and years of, we have developed, and we've done these partnerships. We've done over 60 of them. So we have a lot of experience in it, and I'd be more than happy to participate in that conversation if you would like me to be. And there's a lot to it and a lot of triggers that, hate to use that term, but there's a lot of things that just perceptions that can be put aside with a good open discussion in a public forum.
Right. Thank you, Mark. You guys have rung Sylvia's bell tonight. Yeah. I appreciate that, and I want to tell you that I'm pretty sure that I'll speak to the council, but sure speak for me. Nobody thinks this is the solution.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, council? I'll take a motion.
Thank you.
A motion second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Appreciate your attendance and your participation. Thank you.